All right, good evening. Oh, I'm sorry, did I wake you up? Sorry. Good evening. There you go. All right. Hey, we're going to do something just a little bit different tonight. This is going to be a presentation, and then I want to spend some time answering some of your questions and any questions or comments or discussion you would like to have that maybe we don't get to by the end of our class period tonight. Cheryl and I want to hang around. We're going to go to classroom 107. Dawn gave us that space, and if you would like to hang out and discuss this a little more freely, we would certainly be happy to. Now, before I jump into this, I need to make a couple of quick, you might say, disclaimers. Number one, I am not a perfect parent, don't even claim to be one, and I'm so glad Jill and Gray are not here because they would be raising their hand constantly, all right, going, what? No, all right. I'm also smart enough to be a father who knows that his wife is much smarter than him, and so my job really was don't mess up what she's got going on, all right? And I say that kind of in jest, but also in the same way that we work together as a team. And one thing that I really love about my wife is I'm the extrovert, let's go, let's move. She's the one that just takes you out at the knees and says, that's a bad idea, and let me tell you why, right? And we balanced one another. And because of her desire to really study, to really spend a lot of time learning and digging and researching, we ended up reading a lot of books together, talking to a lot of parents. I'm a big believer, one of the best things you and I can do is surround ourselves with great people, and every single one of us need a board of directors. You need people in your life that you can lean on and learn from, whether it's a family that has great parenting skills and you love the way their kids turned out and you want to learn from them, somebody who has an amazing marriage, somebody who in your career field is thriving, but not just thriving maybe economically, but certainly thriving spiritually. You need people in your life who inspire you to rise above the norm. The fact of the matter is we need mentors. And we leaned heavily on people that we greatly admired. And many of those people that you and I can find are right here among your family in Christ. And so, as a disclaimer, I am merely a facilitator of some thoughts and some ideas. And in no way, shape, or form are we saying as a couple, hey, do what we did and you'll get it all right because we got it all right. No, not even close, all right? Now, here's what I want to begin with. I hope you got one of these handouts. So if you're a parent, you're going to fill it out a little differently than maybe if you're a single or not a parent. But I believe it's very important for all of us to begin with the end in mind. And so when our kids were born, we had goals for them. We had ambitions and desires of where we wanted our family to go and what we wanted our children to learn. And what I'm going to share with you just right quickly off the top is some things that were on our list. Your list may be a little bit different, okay? And that's certainly okay. But if you don't have a destination in mind, if you don't have a goal in mind, you're not ever going to know if you're getting any better, and you're not ever going to have tools in place to make sure you get there because you're just going through life aimlessly. Anybody here ever read 7 Habits? All right. It's a Stephen Covey book. Man, that's a great read. If you haven't read it, I would encourage you to read it. He's also got a great book for families, 7 Habits for Highly Effective Families. But when you begin with the end in mind, here's what you do spiritually. These were our thoughts for our kids. We wanted our kids to be a blessing to others. We didn't want our kids to walk into a room and people go, oh, here come the Robertsons. Preacher kids, look out, right? We wanted them to be servants, not just church goers. We want them to be servants and strive to make a difference. And so when you look at the end game, and we wanted them to have a great, rich understanding of God's Word, that they would know the stories, that they would understand the principles, that they would see the great plan of God. This was the end game, all right? Those are some of the things on our list. Physically, we wanted them to be active. We didn't want them to be couch potatoes. We wanted them to be physically fit and be able to do things that they would want to do. If there's a sport they want to play, we want to give them the tools so they can play that sport. We wanted to make sure that they were maximizing their temple that God had given to them. And it certainly didn't hurt that their mama was a dietitian. So now you understand when I talked about ice cream this morning, while my kids are going, yeah, we'll stay in the puke to get ice cream. All right? But you have certain goals in mind. Where do you want to be physically? It's not going to happen by chance. Socially. We wanted them to have soft skills where they could communicate with anyone. You know what I see? And this is my old man, get off my lawn moment. All right? Has anybody noticed how it's very difficult sometimes for kids to look you in the eye and talk to you? Anybody else picked up on that sometimes? When an older person walks in the room, remember how you were taught to stand and shake their hand and look them in the eye? I got to confess, a lot of kids that hang out with me, they begin to hate me because I'll stand in front of them until they look at me. What's good is I'm eye to eye with most kids in the 5th and 6th grade, so it works out for me. But those soft skills are important. And more importantly, is not that they can converse with any demographic, but that they're able to listen to any demographic. We were so mean to our kids that when we went to a church out of town, and remember their dad's a preacher, when they got back into the van, tell me 3 people you met and what you learned about them. Isn't that mean? I actually expected them to go to church and meet people. But that was some of our goals because we felt like that will help them in life, especially in any career field if you have soft skills. And that takes effort, that takes time. Academics. We had high standards. The high standard was you will do your best. And we want you to have the opportunity to be whatever you want to be. Whatever you needed academically, we were going to try to make it possible for you so that you could go into any career field you choose. And so we tried to surround them with good people. We did a little mixture of homeschool and certainly dual enrollment and other things, but we had in our mind, we had certain places we wanted them to be academically. And then mentally. We wanted them to be confident but not cocky. To be assured of who they were but not ashamed. To learn how to handle failure, to learn how to handle challenges, but yet not fall into a pit of despair when those challenges come. That they have a positive self-image. And more importantly, that they understand they're made in the image of God. And while every single one of us may have a personality thumbprint that's different from everybody else, those of you that are at FC, you've been doing the Clifton Strengths, you have your own unique personality. We want to mold our personality to be like Christ more than anything else. And I share these with you is just that this is the end game. And so hopefully you're thinking about that for your children or you're thinking about that for yourself, because here's what I want you and I to think about as we go through the presentation that I'm about to share with you. How are screens going to help me reach my goals? I want us to pursue purposeful parenting because we're living in a digital culture. And while I'm going to begin talking about the idea of how screens affect our lives and change our lives and the idea that screens can even bring great harm to our lives, I want us to recognize that we have goals. And I need to think, how is this device, how is this technology going to aid or hurt me in reaching my goals? How is it going to aid or hurt my children in reaching our goals? Because here's one thing that I'm going to be very, very clear about, because a lot of what I'm going to say to you is going to sound like I'm telling us to pick up these devices and just throw them away and never go to them again. I am not saying that at all, because they're not going anywhere. It's a part of life now. And so what we have to do is to be mindful that we use them to reach goals. and we don't allow them to become a hindrance to our goals. Anybody here remember the old Olin Mills pictures? Anybody go back there to the family pictures? I remember those. Were those not some of the scariest things you've ever saw in your life? Every now and then you'll visit somebody's house and maybe a little bit older. Oh, that's good night. Well, I don't know whoever thought that was a good idea. The old wagon wheel family picture. I think we all probably got one of those somewhere. Well, I don't know why the wagon wheel became such an icon. Then you had the old acid wash jean days. Didn't we look good in the 90s? Hey, here's how we look today, right? There's your American family today, right? How many of you gone out to eat and you've seen everybody on their phones? I've actually gone to Disney World, and it's crazy. You'll be sitting at Disney World, and everybody's on their phone, and I'm like, oh, my word. You're missing it. You're missing it. But it's a part of life. As a camp director, we began to notice the changes to kids when they came to camp. So back in around 2006, 2007, we began to notice a lot of things, and we noticed there were a lot of challenges that seemed to be taking place in the psyche of the kids that were coming to camp. And immediately, there was many news articles about what devices are doing. And what we noticed is it began to interfere with daily commitments. School, kids would choose this phone or social media even over personal interaction. It would prevent quality of sleep. It prevents regular physical activity. There becomes a strong experience and a strong desire to check your phone. You hear it ding and you immediately got to run to it, or it lights up at night and you immediately got to look at it. And then we began to see and notice that, well, when you would question somebody about their behavior or their use, they would lie about it. All the signs of an addict, right? All the signs of somebody who may be addicted. And then we began to notice some personality changes, especially in young people. First of all, there's an altered reward or award dependence. Just out of curiosity, and here's all on Facebook here. Anybody on Facebook? Come on, own it, own it, own it. All right, how many here, and let's just be honest, you're in church. How many here have gone back to look to see how many likes you got on a post? Come on. Where's my preachers? Come on, get your, all right. Sure we have. You post something, you go, that was good. People should be all over that. And what happens often to kids is, and adults, we're more concerned how people we don't even know, who aren't even near us, respond to us and give us a like more than we are than the people who are in our immediate vicinity, who have the greatest passion and the greatest desire to love us and care for us think. It's altered. And as children of God, let me just make a quick point, another soapbox moment. The only like that you and I should really be concerned about, it's where I stand in God's eyes. Nothing else matters. Low self-esteem, low cooperation, anxiety and depression. We began to see all these things. We didn't really understand how it was happening and exactly why it was happening because we didn't have enough research until this came out in 2020. A documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. And what we began to learn and understand from documentaries like this is that there's algorithms. And the algorithms in the devices are hunting us down. Just out of curiosity, anybody ever gone and looked at an item? Maybe you were looking at some tennis shoes or something, and you were thinking about buying them, and then you decided not to. And then later that day, you were on Facebook, and they came up on the screen. It must have been the Holy Spirit telling you, you should go and get those. Yeah, and then you go to another, they showed up on the ESPN page. This is my sign. It's called an algorithm, people. It's reading your IP address. And here's what's crazy, especially when it comes to social media. They know what you like. They know what you're prone to be in wanting to see. And so immediately you start, here's what I'm getting a lot of right now. I get workout videos, golf swings, Bible stuff, and Gator football. It's bad, isn't it? It's like, the Gator football would just go away. I can't take it. Because it knows me. It knows your kids. And it's going to feed them. There was a quote in the documentary that should really, really make us stop and think. It was from the CEO of Netflix. And the CEO of Netflix said, "Our greatest competitor is YouTube, Facebook, and sleep." So know what you do to keep somebody on it? As soon as one video ends, the next one comes up. As one movie ends, the next one comes up. And that's how we find ourselves maybe looking for just 30 seconds, and the next thing you know, 30 minutes went by, or maybe a couple hours went by. Why? Because it hooked us in. Anybody remember magazines? Anybody seen one? You can see them in the Smithsonian. They're pretty cool. They're a little magazine printout. Get it once a month, and you got to the end, and it ended, and you waited till the next month. Oh, not anymore. It never ends. It never ends. It never ends. And so here's what we're stuck in. Echo chambers. An echo chamber is the device knows how to feed you what it believes you want to hear. And so you and I get stuck in this proverbial vacuum of repetitive thoughts and ideas. Let me give you an example of this and why this is so bad. This is not political, it's just a point. A man was murdered on a college campus. Assassinated, would be a fair way of putting it. And because of the echo chambers, depending on what your likes are, what your desires are, people are immediately fed information, more and more information, so that one side is going, "Oh, this is the greatest travesty, this is a martyrdom." The other side's going, "Yeah, but he brought it to himself." And immediately a very tragic situation turned into a fight. Isn't that amazing? Only in America. Earlier that same week, a young lady was slain while riding public transportation in a town. The Christian viewpoint is it's a tragedy regardless of your opinion. But the echo chamber makes us want to rise up and hate, rise up and fight. And one of the biggest challenges we're all dealing with now is we're all generally fed only one side or one viewpoint of a story. Balance is out the window. Learning both sides is out the window. And let me just say this is a huge problem for Christians. You lose empathy. You lose sympathy. You lose the ability to sit back and think through it. And so in the echo chamber, you're stuck in what's called a group think, and it continues to reinforce a negative self-image, because often if you're already going down and spiraling down a certain path, you're going to continue to go down it even farther. There will be increased polarization. There will be amplified trends or movements, and ultimately there's just a lack of balance. There's a lack of balance in our life with respect to understanding. There's a lack of balance in our life with seeing other people's viewpoints. Real quick, just a real quick story. Do you remember the story of Simon the Pharisee? And the woman from the world came in. Simon the Pharisee already had the preconceived idea. His wheels were turning. This woman is evil. She is sinful. If Jesus knew who she was, he would rise up and do something about it. He's getting all one side of the story. But Jesus saw another side. Jesus saw somebody living in pain, somebody hurting, somebody who was repentant. And his criticism of Simon was not that Simon wasn't right. She was a sinner. But that Simon couldn't see himself. And because he was stuck in an echo chamber in his own mind, he couldn't see the potential in that woman. And that was without a phone. Annie Lemke has written a book, and don't feel like you got to write all this down. I'm going to leave you my slides, and I'll throw all the research out to you when it's over. But Annie Lemke wrote a book called Dopamine Nation, and she simply refers to the smartphone as the modern-day hypodermic needle. And they're turning us into smartphone junkies. In the same way that an addict is going to be addicted to cocaine or alcohol, it's the same dopamine pattern in our minds that's causing us to simply be a slave of the device. And there's a relentless pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain, but yet the avoidance of pain and the relentless pursuit of pleasure always leads to more pain. Isn't that true? Instant gratification rarely gratifies. And so you have what is really a big problem today, and the research is showing this. We literally have a world filled with cell phone addiction. Sleep deprived, low concentration, creative blocks. So you have an aggravated ADD effect and anxiety and stress. It's just shooting through the roof. Loneliness, insecurity, impaired relationships. Kids are dealing with poor grades and psychological disorders. It's just skyrocketing right now. I mean, it's all over the place, and you don't have to go far to see the research on this. I'm going to jump out of my pay grade real quick for just a moment. Actually, I've been out of my pay grade since I started, but nonetheless, I'm going to jump out it real big right now. Two kinds of pleasure chemicals in our brain. One's dopamine, the other's serotonin. God gave them to us. God gave them to us. Dopamine is that quick rush you get when you eat a great piece of chocolate cake. Yeah. Or birthday cake Bluebell ice cream. The school has put the Bluebell right when you're exiting. You have to go put your plate in the back of the kitchen, and you have to. It's product placement galore on you. You have to pass it. Serotonin, though. Serotonin, forgive me, this is really small. I apologize. But serotonin is a pleasure that comes from being challenged in completing a difficult task, but getting to the end of it. It's that happiness you feel when you get the diploma, when you finished your first marathon. You're actually doing like this, but but you finished. When you've succeeded at something hard. Both have a place in our lives. The problem is we're all drawn to dopamine to a dangerous level. And the cell phone has made us a junkie. That's why porn is skyrocketing. 73% of teens have consumed pornography. 45% of teens believe that pornography gives them helpful information about sex. 12 is the average age of the first viewer of porn. It's crazy. And here's going back to the algorithm. Phil's a male. We kind of throw that in there every now and then just to see if he bites. Johnny's 16. He's just starting to get hit with all those fun little chemicals that come with puberty. Let me throw this in there, see if he gets hooked. And so what you find is, and parents, you got to know this. Instagram girl is a gateway drug to pornography girl. Because the algorithms know how to reel us in. Think about it. You lock your front door, bolt it, but we leave their bedrooms wide open to anybody anywhere in the world if they're in there with a device with unlimited access. We allow anyone in the world to shape their morals and shape their values when we leave that door open. And even more dangerous, we leave the predator an opportunity. And one of the ways predators seek out our kids the most is through games. The little chat room in games. I can't tell you how many parents have come to me and told me that their child got pulled in and was almost going to go meet somebody that they had met in a game. Cal Newport's done a lot of research. In fact, he's got a great little podcast in which he talks about things like this. And one of the neat things that he shared recently was he shared how we're seeing a great decline in reading. Go back many years ago, go back to about 1985, and you would find that little over 30% of U.S. teenagers would read every day. Today, it's over 40% hardly ever read. Why? Because our life is consumed with images. Why do I need to read? My life is consumed. So the cognitive learning is on a deep decline. And so as a result, here's what we're seeing today. And this is research that is out there. The ability to concentrate is going down. Difficult thinking is more and more challenging today. And there's trouble with learning new things. Why is that? Because our brains are being rewired. Microsoft study finds that relying on AI kills your critical thinking skills. And just think about it. How easy is it to go and just grab something? Now, here's what I got to confess. I grew up in the Dewey Decimal System. Most of you went, I have no idea. Oh, it was great. If you wanted to research something, you'd go to a card catalog and you started searching through it and looking for it and you'd find it. And then you run over here and you go, oh, wait, it's in a microfilm. And then you got to go to another catalog and you would dig through it and you would find all these tiny little films. And you run to a little microscope and you start swinging around and you go, oh, yes, there it is. Oh, and that's not exactly what I need. We start all over again. I tell you, if you can just jump on something in Google, yeah, the Lord knew where to put me. Because I would have been an AI junkie. I am prone to easy. And easy is killing our critical thinking. And it's killing our relationship skills. To me, this is kind of mind-boggling. In 1995, students said they went on dates several times a month, about 34%. In 2022, 71% say they rarely go on dates. Why? Because we don't know how to socially interact with one another. I mentioned to you this morning what we're seeing with AI is that kids are turning to AI not just for questions to find research or anything else with respect to a paper or a test. They're using AI even as a relational source. Does this girl really like me? What do I need to do to make her like me? Should I continue on with this? What do you think? What's the... And they're turning to a robot. Florida lawmakers are considering stricter social media. We're actually seeing that right now. Not just in Florida, but even in New York, where the top doc in New York says that kids shouldn't have phones before the age of 14 for the sake of their mental health. Even in California, we're already seeing restrictions on cell phone use. Why? Because students are constantly distracted and with anxiety. And doctors, especially when you look even at overseas in places like the Irish and in Ireland, the top doc there is encouraging people to understand smartphones are destructive, especially when they're used by children under the age of 16. Why? Because their brains can't handle that just yet. And I'd even make the argument for most of us, even if we're older, I don't know if our brains can handle it. More and more states now are finally jumping on board and banning them one way or another. But then there's this clash. You know what the biggest challenge is with smartphone restrictions? Parents. Camp is a no cell phone zone. I've had kids turn in dummy cell phones. I'm kind of onto it now. If any dude hands me a pink cell phone, I'm like, whoa, I don't want to do this. Willful defiance of the rules. And who are they texting during the week? Their parents. Why? Well, part of it's because of fear. Fear of life without the phone. It's actually a social disorder. It hasn't officially been named nomophobia. Anybody ever gone back to get your phone? Yes, you have. Fear of not being accepted without it. Well, you don't understand. You don't understand. My child needs a phone because they'll be the only one that doesn't have one. And I don't want them to feel rejected. And I don't want to feel rejected. I don't want to be a bad parent if I don't give it to them. The fear of not knowing their constant location. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Okay, I do stalk my kids. It's fun, actually. You're at Starbucks? Get me one. I know you're 4 states over, but just get me one anyhow, would you? It's fun. Fear not having the latest tech. I'm thinking and I'm hoping that cell phones are going to go the way of seatbelts and cigarettes. Remember how everybody used to say, "Can't make me wear a seatbelt, I tell you what, you're infringing on my rights." And now what's the first thing you ask when somebody's in a wreck? Did you have your seatbelt on? Oh, it saved your life. Right? Kids not climbing in the back. Get a seatbelt on, we're not moving. Right? Cigarettes? Can't tell me not to smoke. Well, let's look at some evidence on that. Anybody remember when you were a kid coming to church and between Bible class and the first assembly, all the men were outside puffing on one? Y'all remember that? And if you came into services, you had to cut through the smoke to get in there. Hey, yeah. You don't see that anymore. Why? It's not socially acceptable. Why? Because we realize, hey, smoking's not really that good for you. You might want to really think about it. My hope is that's the way we go with cell phones. Why is that? Because here's what we're finding in studies. 40% of 2-year-olds already have screens. 25% have a cell phone by the age of 8. And 20% are already using devices to comfort or at mealtime or to fall asleep. Here, just would you hush? Let me give you a phone. And so what doesn't happen is a bedtime story. What doesn't happen is a little bit of conversation. What doesn't happen is a little more patience and socialization together. Abigail Shrier, this is a great book, parents. I would encourage you to read this. It's called Bad Therapy. She says the entire society has dropped the ball when it comes to kids and smartphones. Teens today have less face time with friends and they're lonelier than ever. Isn't that interesting? Social media has made us less social. Teens hang out with friends an hour less a day than the previous generation. And here's the biggest challenge, she says. The reluctance to take them away is actually a sign of a larger problem. I think she's right. Parents say, and they need it to stay calm. I don't want them to be the only ones not to have one. Another great resource I would strongly encourage you to read is The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. He's noticed how it's changed us socially. For time's sake, I'm not going to read all the quotes here. But I want you to understand that what Haidt has noticed in his study, and he's a non-believer. Let me just make that clear. But he's a social scientist out of New York University. And what he says is the greatest problem with technology is that it's keeping us from working and associating and conversing together. That's why kids don't have soft skills. That's why they can't look you in the eye. And unfortunately, neither can their parents. Because we're all like this. And we can't do this. And we would rather share our feelings and our thoughts and our anxieties and our fears to a robot than to talk to somebody else face to face. Somebody who really cares about us. And we're doing it all under the guise of overprotection. Well, they got to have it. They got to have it. But the irony is, and this is going to sound real strange, and this is one of the things that he points out in his research, is that kids don't get hurt enough today. We got them so bubble wrapped that they haven't been challenged. They haven't experienced good fear. They haven't been made to move. They're simply sitting. Snapchat? Oh, man. You know what one of the biggest fears of kids is? Is that somebody will take a picture of them that makes them a meme. That's their biggest fear in life. Or what's called sextortion, is they will say something about them that belittles them anyway, in a sexual way. 68% of teens polled in January admit that they've received some sort of harm online because of what others have said about them. Remember the Tower of Babel? What made the Tower of Babel so bad? Was it because man was trying to build a tower all the way up to heaven? I often thought God would have just said, nah, y'all keep going. We'll see how long this lasts. You're going to pass out any moment for lack of oxygen. Falling over the side. Let them go. No, it was willful defiance. Man wanted to change his domain. Instead of filling the earth and multiplying and going all over the face of the earth, man said, we're not going to do that. We're going to band together and we're going to go up into a different realm. And here's what that unification did. It got the whole world in the whole world's ear. And while we often applaud at unification, not all unification is good. When the entire world is in your ear, it is not good for us. And not since the Tower of Babel has the whole world been in our ear. It's too much information. And so God separated man. Why? To save him. He confused their language. Why? So that they would be separated. And here's the deal, brethren. This is so important. We should have a different language from the world. We should be different. I tell you, the last place you should hear a parent say, I know. I want my kids to be different, but everybody else at church is doing it, and it's just, that should never happen here. This is where different is appreciated. You remember the story of the parable of the soils? You remember that, right? You know what's said of the thorny ground? The cares of the world grew up and choked out the word. Cheryl's got a line. We got to be careful that we're not the ones who planted the tares in our children's spiritual garden. Where do they get the device? Where do they get the influences? It came from us. That's why I'm a big believer in camp. Camp is so great. It's that 1 week of the year you live without your phone. I got to admit, in the first 24 hours, most kids have a little twitch. The real gamers, their thumbs are just doing this. They can't help it. Yeah, how you doing, Mr. Phil? But by the second or third day, man, you can just see the peace come on everybody's heart. And by midweek, everybody is enjoying themselves, laughing, conversing together. They're not just making memories. They're learning how to make life truly life. Because it's a social interaction that God designed. So let's go back to it, okay? What are some things that you and I can do so that we don't fall into the pattern of the world? I'm going to share just my thoughts, and then I'm going to open it up to you. I believe parents, you got to set a good example. You got to set a good example. In fact, you got to set a great example. You need to establish some family restrictions. Here was the restriction around our house. 16. Nobody needs a device before the age of 16. If you need it for school, that's great. You'll do it in the living room, in the kitchen, in front of everyone else. You discuss addictive behaviors. Hey, I noticed you're on your phone. Cheryl and I are taking off tomorrow morning. We're going out to California, to Yosemite. My daughter Jill's already said, all right, Dad, here's the deal. Turn the phone off. Turn the phone off. No calls, no text, no emails. It's just us. That actually hit me pretty hard. I feel like I try to be responsible with my device. But she's like, I just need Dad for a week. Seek communities with similar standards. This is the big one, parents. And sometimes this is hard to find. But nobody likes to be different, especially our kids. And I get it. That's a hard principle to teach. But you find the community, and it might even be a minor community within your church community that have your same values and restrictions. And don't be afraid to be different. Sorry, you were drinking out of a fire hose. But I think this is very important. Thoughts. I have just a few minutes left. Thoughts or comments? Anybody here work in cybersecurity or work with computers? Anybody here? All right. You know what I found? Almost everybody, and correct me if I'm wrong, almost everybody who works in computers, or especially cybersecurity, is the person who's beating the drum on this. I haven't run into anybody else who said, yeah, I work in computers all day long. I don't see a problem with it. Hadn't run into that person yet. In fact, if you go and you look at the research, even so many of the Google executives and Apple executives and even Steve Jobs himself didn't let their kids have unlimited use of devices. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Comments? All right. Let me just leave you with this one last thought. Y'all are really sweet and kind. If somebody came in here tonight and just lit up a cigarette, would you be a little concerned? Sure you would. And you may be a person that smokes. I am not being critical of you. But it's not as socially acceptable today. Why? Because we gone, that's not really good for us. Totally. And you could throw a lot of other things in there too, I know. Any other addiction. But I long for the day in which we, as at least the brethren in Christ, go, you know what? There's a lot of research. There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of kids dealing with a lot of mental and social issues. We might want to take this seriously. And when one community says, you know what? That needs to be us. That shines a light. It makes a difference. And it's not getting rid of phones and technology completely. It's not going anywhere. You got to learn how to use it. But use it with self-control. And if you don't have the control, then do what the good book tells us to do. Cut it off. If your right hand causes you to sin, just get rid of it. And that may be us. I need to get rid of it. But may we have the courage ourselves to be mindful of that. Yeah, Bruce. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great idea. You can keep them bored by keeping them busy. Yeah, just move that rock pile again. I really want it back over here if you don't mind. Yeah, But physical